What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Game Script. We got the NFL wildcard round, Sunday night football between the Washington Commanders and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for Sunday night football. Going to be breaking down that game for DraftKings Showdown lineups and player pool. Before I get into it, it's going to be a barn burner, and there's some potential matchups that people are overlooking in this one that I think can help us get a little bit different, and I'm going to get into it right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heatseeker Sports, and you're watching Game Script. We're looking at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Washington Commanders. We got a 51.5-point total with the Bucs as 3-point favorites in this one. They're playing in Tampa Bay, and it's a very high-scoring game. I believe it's the highest-scoring game on the slate for wildcard games, and it's going to be a fun one to break down. See a lot of matchup opportunities that we might be able to take advantage of that are going a little bit lower owned than they should be, and some that are going a little bit higher owned than they should be. So it should be a good showdown slate for us, and I'll break that down in a second. Make sure to hit the like button, give me the 30 likes so I can put out a shorter video later on, or actually so I can put my picks in the comment section later on. I haven't had time to do the shorter videos besides the underdog videos that I do. You're going to want to subscribe to the channel. I'm looking for 1,600 subscribers. I need about 60 left to get there. So if you guys do that, I definitely appreciate it. And you want to subscribe anyways because videos pop up at random times, and I don't really have a set schedule with my job and everything that gets in the way with putting these videos up on a set schedule. So subscribe to the channel and sign up for alerts for when these videos come out. And let's break this thing down. So it should be a pretty fun game. First, let's take a look at the injuries, and we'll look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers first. Tampa Bay has most of their injuries are on the defensive side, but everyone who is questionable is expected to play. So I don't think that we'll have too much to worry about, hopefully, with the injuries to the Bucs. I have a big stake in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for my best ball teams. Playoff best ball teams, invested heavily in them. If you watch my playoff best ball shows, I've been drafting the Bucs for the past few weeks before they clinched their spot and was getting them super cheap. And hopefully you guys were too. So Bucs hopefully tonight ends up living up to the total, and we see some big performances from them. I did not have a lot of exposure to Nico Collins, and not as much as I should have for Derrick Henry last night. So a little bit scary there, but hopefully we get some big performances out of Bucky Irving and the Bucs here tonight. So obviously Chris Godwin on IR. Got a few guys on IR. Cade Otton is questionable, but he's expected to play, and this will be big because he's first week back in a few weeks. He's been on IR, or not IR, but on the injury list for the past few weeks with a knee injury. And Payne Durham has done really well without him, and Devin Culp has even made some big plays without him. So it gets a little bit dicey there with Cade Otton's role when he's coming back. But hopefully he has a significant role still in this offense. The Washington Commanders are only giving up 10.7 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. So not a major great matchup for Otton, but still, he's one of the top weapons and one of the guys that filled in while Chris Godwin was and Mike Evans were both out. And Otton had some huge games. He was basically the de facto Chris Godwin before Jalen McMillan started to step up and take over that role. So let's go to the Washington side and look at some of the injuries to the Washington Commanders. So the Commanders, Jamison Crowder is banged up. That's going to be significant for Olamide Zaccheaus, I think. Zaccheaus running a decent amount of his routes in the slot, and that's where Tampa Bay has been susceptible. I believe they're top 10 matchup for slot receivers as far as, targets and yards gained versus their defense for slot receivers. Noah Brown also still on IR. He was playing a pretty decent role before he got hurt, and then of course Olamide Zaccheaus has been on fire the last few weeks. As far as the defense, not really seeing too much on the defense to worry about as far as injuries, which is not great for Mike Evans, because that means Marshawn Lattimore, he's not on the injury report. And this is a matchup that Evans does not do well on. I've heard some analysts trying to play down this matchup, but it's a legit matchup. Just to give you a little bit of history between Mike Evans and Marshawn Lattimore, I hear a lot, don't fear matchups and everything like that with cornerbacks and elite wide receivers can overcome matchups, blah, blah, blah. But, I don't really buy into that 100%, because there are certain matchups that, some wide receivers just struggle with. They just can't overcome it. And so if we look at the New Orleans Saints versus Mike Evans, that's where Marshawn Lattimore and Mike Evans had their previous matchup. Look at Mike Evans' yardage totals against the Saints while Marshawn Lattimore was there. The first good game that he had 14 targets, 9 receptions, 89 yards. That was against the Saints in the week 18, where they got Mike his bonus for receiving yards on the season. Marshawn Lattimore was gone at that point, right? Earlier in the season, though, Marshawn Lattimore, when he was still with the Saints, 2 receptions, 34 yards for Mike Evans. Previous games, 3 receptions, 70 yards, 3 receptions, 40 yards, 4 receptions, 59 yards, 3 receptions, 61 yards. Some of these games are with Tom Brady as the quarterback too. So it's not just Baker or, Jameson Williams or Jameson Winston or Baker Mayfield that have trouble throwing to Mike Evans with Marshawn Lattimore. It's across the board. 1 reception, 14 yards. A couple of these games he got ejected in too. 2 receptions, 48 yards. 4 receptions, 64 yards. 1 reception, 2 yards. So some really just Marshawn Lattimore is the basically only guy who has owned Mike Evans. You have to go way back to find a matchup that he actually had a decent performance in. That was in 2018 when he had 147 yards and a touchdown. But other than that, you look from 2018 on, Mike Evans only had 2 touchdowns versus the Saints, and a large part of that is due to that matchup. You look at the playoff game in 2020, 3 targets, 1 reception, 3 yards against the Saints. He had a touchdown at least on that, but still under 10 DraftKings points. And with the expensive price tag on Mike Evans tonight, that's going to be a dicey situation to kind of invest in with his history. And, despite that obvious history, Mike Evans is the 3rd highest owned captain on tonight's slate. So, I would tend to fade the ownership on this one and go against Mike Evans and say, you know what, I'll just take the obvious matchup struggles that he's had in this game against the receiver, the cornerback Marshawn Lattimore, and just go against Mike Evans in this one. It's an easy bet to make. Marshawn Lattimore, the only upside for Evans is the injury that Lattimore has. On top of that, the Commanders are being run by a great defensive-minded coach. He turned Dallas's defense into a juggernaut for a few years before getting the Washington head coach job. So Dan Quinn, very successful defensive coordinator, and now he's having a good run as a head coach. Former head coach for the Falcons too, by the way, when they made their Super Bowl. So Cade Otton is back. I talked about that. Jayden Daniels is going to be in a good spot. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are giving up 20.8 DraftKings points a game. They are the best matchup for a quarterback left on the wild card round. Mike Evans, talked about him. 6,200. He's going to be the third highest owned in the captain. I will fade that very easily. Bucky Irving is 1,500 in the captain. Bucky Irving's a much better captain play, but he's the second highest owned on the slate for the captain options. And that's going to put guys like Baker Mayfield under 10%, Terry McLaurin under 10%. All these guys have good matchups because it's a potential shootout that we're talking about here. And with the shootout situation, like a lot of these guys are going to have good matchups. Two defenses that have been very poor, but they've been pass funnel for at least for the Tampa Bay defense. The Washington defense is more of they've been a run funnel recently, but they're exploitable against the pass. I'm hoping that Baker and Bucky Irving are able to have good games in this one. The target for Baker is going to be Jalen McMillan tonight. Jalen McMillan should get a decent amount of work. He's been one of the go-to guys for Baker recently, and with the attention focused on Mike Evans, that's going to open things up for Jalen McMillan. Washington's only given up 10.7 DraftKings points a game to the slot receiver recently. But, this could be a situation where Jalen McMillan has a pretty big game against a opponent that is probably going to be able to keep up with the Bucs offense and basically send this into a high scoring total like we're seeing Vegas project. So McMillan is shockingly under 5% projected ownership. I don't know if I'm buying that one. I'm seeing Zach Ertz also very cheap ownership, and he is another guy in a great matchup. As far as the Bucs against the tight end position, they're giving up, let's see, according to Evan Silva, they're allowing the sixth most receiving yards to wide receivers out of the slot. That's the wrong one. Only 7 defenses have permitted more fantasy tight end points to the Bucs than the Bucs. That's a shout out to Evan Silva on that one, and that's a really good matchup for Zach Ertz. And he's also become kind of a de facto wide receiver too, almost. Olamide Zaccheaus has been playing a bigger role recently, and he is getting a lot of targets as well. But if we look at Zach Ertz recently, we can see 5 targets, 7 targets, a couple games with 2 targets, but he had 6 targets, 8 targets, 7 targets, 8 targets, 11 targets in there. A lot of targets going to Zach Ertz, even though he's old. And if we look at Olamide Zaccheaus, 5 targets, 9 targets, 8 targets, 4 targets, 3 targets. Olamide Zaccheaus is another guy who's going to be interesting on tonight's slate. And his total ownership is coming in shockingly under 20%. So we're going to have all sorts of fun building lineups on this slate with some of these guys that are going criminally under-owned. Bucky Irving, I talked about. He's just been a stud. He's taken over the role from Rashad White, and he's done well with it. He's just had an outstanding rookie season, and he's been coming alive more so in the end of the season. Baker Mayfield with a good matchup. Terry McLaurin, also a decent matchup. Terry McLaurin, 12 targets, 7 targets, 6 targets, 10 targets. He's the main guy here on the Washington offense. Last game against Tampa Bay, he had only 3.7 DraftKings points, but that was before him and Jayden Daniels got their connection. Don't forget that these teams faced off in week 1 of the regular season. Tampa Bay took that game, but it was a shootout. That was a game that I had Jayden Daniels stacks, and they ended up doing really well for me in that first week, and it got me off to the season off to a bang for me with that matchup. So looking down further, not too interested in Brian Robinson. He hasn't done a whole lot recently. He's just been He's been very, very bad lately, very poor runner. But Washington has a good matchup because Tampa Bay's given up 21.2 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. So, that's going to maybe open the door for Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler is one of the targets that Jayden Daniels likes to target against this style of defense. So Austin Eckler should be in a good spot in this one, and maybe he gets a little bit bigger workload with Brian Robinson's struggles recently. So don't forget about Austin Eckler in this matchup, and he's cheap at 4,800. We're also going to see Dyami Brown. Dyami Brown is another guy that I'm interested in. He's the guy that also gets a decent amount of targets against this style of defense that Tampa Bay runs. And he's one of the top guys that gets targeted against the blitz. And Tampa Bay likes to run the blitz at the third highest rate in the league. Give you an idea of Dyami's ownership here. Looking at about a 15% total ownership for Dyami. Not interested in him in the captain necessarily, but if we need to go cheap to load up our studs, then Dyami maybe not such a bad option in the cap. So let's check out and see what else we got here. Kickers always going to be in play. McLaughlin for Tampa Bay, he's just been a stud. A lot of double digit point totals, DraftKings point totals for him. Rashad White, he's still been getting carries in the red zone, so don't write off White. But I think he's a little bit probably too thin for this. I'd rather take Eckler over White. Let's see what their ownerships are. Eckler, we're looking at about 30% owned, so I think people are on to him. As far as White coming in under 20% owned, so White would be the sneakier target there if you wanted to fade the field on that one. Gonzalez, Washington's kicker, hasn't been that great. Hasn't had too many double-digit points, but they've probably just been scoring a lot of touchdowns on the Washington side. But he is another guy that's going to be in play. Payne Durham was taking over that role for Cade Otton, but Cade Otton's looking like he's going to be back. Defenses, and not terribly interested in the defenses tonight. I think that I would take Dyami Brown over these defenses. Sterling Shepard has not really done much since he joined the team, even though him and Baker have a shower narrative going to college together. And if we're going lower, Culp might be interested at 1,600. He's an interesting guy. Trey Palmer might be interesting with the attention that's going to be on Mike Evans. If we're looking for a cheap guy that could get us a cheap touchdown, $600 for Trey Palmer. With that extra attention on Mike Evans, we're going to be needing to look to other spots for these wide receivers. I like Jalen McMillan, but Sterling Shepard. Let's go here and look at the snap counts for these guys. All right, so if we're looking at the wide receiver position, and we want to see the snap counts for Tampa Bay. We're looking at 59% for Mike Evans, 42% for Sterling Shepard, 7% for Raheem Jarrett, 59% for Jalen McMillan, and only 8% for Trey Palmer. But you've seen Trey Palmer when Sterling Shepard was out, he had 23%, but he's had 13 and 17% with Shepard in the lineup. So for $600, that's still a decent amount of usage or work. As far as targets, he hasn't had targets since week 16, though. That's the only problem there. So Trey Palmer, maybe not as good a situation, but Ryan Miller, he's another guy. Let's look at Ryan Miller's usage, 8%. So he's about the same as Trey Palmer, but he does seem to get more targets. Let's go look at Ryan Miller. 4 targets in week 17, 2 targets in week 16, 1 target in week 15. The dagger target against me when I was winning the showdown for the Tampa Bay versus Kansas City. I recommended him on the show. He ended up scoring a touchdown, but it ended up biting me in the ass. It sent them into overtime, which ultimately killed my winning showdown lineup and cost me $118K. But Ryan Miller, maybe we can go back to him this week, and he is at $800. So I think maybe between Miller and Palmer, that might be a rotational situation. You start one guy and then swap them out for the same lineup. All right, so let's go ahead and build this lineup. Captain options. Jayden Daniels is going to be the top guy for captain options. Let's put him in. Let's get Bucky Irving in there. A lot of people are going to still want to play Mike Evans, so let's see if we can get Evans in there. Let's go cheap here. Let's get Eckler. Let's see if we can find anyone else cheap. Diami, I told you about him. Leave us with 4D500. You put you in Payne Durham territory. Bucks, Commanders D, Sterling Shepard, guys like that. But that's one direction that you can go if you believe in Mike Evans this week and you want to start a chalky captain. I tend to like to go for the guys that are under 10% owned, preferably under 5 or 6% owned. And that's going to take me to Jalen McMillan as the captain option. I'm going to go with McMillan. I'm going to go with Daniels because I think he's, basically you can't really go against Daniels too much tonight. I'm going to go with Irving. I'm going to go with Baker and see where that leaves me. These are some of my favorite plays on the slate. They're the studs that I like. I've got them all in this lineup. I'm going to get Eckler in there too. Give a target for Daniels. That's going to leave me with 3K. And that leaves me in this territory where I might consider someone like, like Ryan Miller or Trey Palmer. So if I wanted to go with Miller in this one, maybe I can upgrade from Eckler. That'd give me Zacchaeus. So I don't mind that at all with Zacchaeus as an option. Ertz also, who I spoke about. This could be a situation where we rotate Ertz and Zacchaeus with a lineup like this. Let's clear this one out. Let's put Zacchaeus in the captain instead. No, let's put Ertz in the captain. Let's get Daniels in there. Irving, Mayfield, and McMillan. See, like there's so many studs on this in this game that I'm even leaving McLaurin out. It's hard to get guys like McLaurin in here too. But that leaves us with 2K, and that leaves us down in that spot where we see Culp, we see McNichols, McCaffrey, and Ryan Miller. Ryan Miller, probably him and Culp would probably be my favorite plays at this under 2K range. Rodriguez got the touchdown for us the other week when I called that in my underdog video. Got made fun of in the chat or in the comment section, and then Rodriguez hit. So was happy to see that. Let's get a little bit. Let's think this one through here a little bit. So let's say maybe if we're going to fade one of these quarterbacks to get Terry McLaurin in, I think it has to be Mayfield. Let's put McLaurin in here. We got Bucky in there to get us the Tampa Bay points, and we got McMillan. That's going to leave us with 2K left, 22K or 2,200. That's going to leave us with options like Ryan Miller, Trey Palmer, guys like that. So that's a initial direction. Looking at this slate, just keep in mind Evans has a really bad historic matchup in this game. He could come through, but I would rather bet against that ownership that he's going to draw and go with guys like McMillan and Ertz and guys like that. And keep in mind that guys like Ertz, McMillan, Zacchaeus, they're all going to be very low owned in the captain because there's so many studs on here. And those are going to be the types of guys that are going to help us clear up room to build lineups where we can get more of those studs into our lineups. So keep that in mind. Hit the like button. Give me the 30 likes so I can put out my favorite picks in the comment section later on. And make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm looking for 1,600 subscribers, and I need to get there by the end of wildcard weekend. And I appreciate you guys' help with that. I only need 50 left, so throw me a bone with that. All right, guys, I'm going to get this up, and let's crush it tonight.